So I've done quite a few stories on the top clubs. We're talking the top 4 or 5 dominant clubs. What about the other clubs? What about the ones we never ever hear about? The 1% clubs, just as wild, just as dangerous, but they fly under the radar. Sure, they have smaller numbers, they're not kicking up nearly as much dust. Let's talk about one of those. What club? The Gypsy Joker MC. What did they do? Well, I've got all that and much more. This is who I was, but it's definitely not who I am. Welcome to Vegas Profile Stories. Let's get it. So the Gypsy Joker Motorcycle Club has been around from the beginning pretty much. These dudes came out in the 50s, started in the San Francisco Bay Area, and actually built up to be the second largest motorcycle club in America. The only problem was the number 1 club, also from San Francisco, the Hells Angels. So obviously they get into some sort of a funk. They have it out, Gypsy Joker, they go up to Oregon, they go up to Washington State, they leave California. So apparently it's a handshake deal. The Hells Angels say, we won't go to Oregon, we won't go to Washington, you guys are not allowed here. Bingo, bango, boom, they've carved out their territory. Now it's not only America that they're in. Gypsy Jokers, Australia, they are banging over there. They got Germany, Norway, South Africa. I'm sorry, I was just imagining what they sound like. And they have had run-ins with the law, mostly Australia, but some here, some there. We'll get into that right now. July 28, 2004, Portland, Oregon. In the early morning hours, the police come, they come with their tanks and their tear gas. They start busting everything up. We're raiding the clubhouse. Now in that raid, they came out with nothing, not a damn thing, except for a brand new $50,000 settlement that they had to pay the club for tearing their stuff up when they came in looking for whatever they said would be there. It's always a good time when the cops come and they bust down your door and your gates and, you know, do bad things to your dog, and then they find nothing. Then all of a sudden it's, hey, well, we were told. Sure. Who's going to pay for that door? That's a $50,000 door right there. That's what the Gypsy Jokers did. April 10th, 2008, Kennewick, Washington. Well, they're back at it again. This time they raid the clubhouse in Kennewick and they find something. Now it's not much, it's like Tuesday in Vegas type of deal. They found some dope, they found some stolen items, they found some bangers. If you listen to what the cops say, when they arrested the 4 guys that they arrested, it'd make them sound like they were the American cartel or something like that. Legitimately, not really the bust of a century. August 2008, Maddington, Perth, Australia. Now, because they were having problems raiding the clubhouse for the Gypsy Joker Perth, Australia, they decided they needed to take the club to court and make it to where they had to take down all fortification around their clubhouse. This includes stuff like metal gates, high gates, walls, you know, maybe barbed wire, who really knows, cameras, all of that. They actually won in court, and the cops forced them to take down all fortification because you can't have a hard time when I'm raiding you. God forbid I have to help my pal over here jump over when I commit oppression and tyranny on you guys. I hate to have to jump a wall. More years, more mayhem, mostly in Australia. Those dudes over there, down there, yeah, they're definitely with the function. They are with the business, every bit of it. They are getting it. You'll hear more in just a minute. So apparently in Australia, they decided, hey, this lead detective on this case, we need to go ahead. We need to get rid of that guy. And that's what they did. Then there was another incident. They took out 5 dudes from a different rival club. Now, if you ask me, they're living up to the name. They're doing everything to the most, to the max. They're down there getting it. Then October 12th, 2013 rolls around. Josh Cavett, a member of the Gypsy Jokers, finds himself in quite a bit of trouble. Apparently, Josh decided he was going to go and smoke his wife, his estranged wife. It's a weird word for split up. Now, she had 2 daughters. He decided the best thing for him to do was to go ahead and take one of them on the run with him. Now, as far as I know, nothing funky was going on. It was more like a hostage type situation. Now, of course, Josh Cavett, he was convicted. He got 29 years to life. Now, the club did the right thing. They stood back, they watched. How is this going to play out? As soon as he was convicted, they did the most gangster thing I've heard of. They really showed their true colors when in front of cameras, in front of the judge, and in front of God himself, they kicked that man out of the club in the courtroom right after being convicted. That's as classy as it gets right there. You can't ask for much more. They literally threw that man out of the club in public. June 18th, 2014, Sydney, Australia. Well, the Australian brothers are down there doing their thing, and they get raided by the cops, of course. That's when Australian police find Cleo, the alpaca. The what? I just want to take this time to shout out all the Gypsy Jokers, Australia. You guys are definitely you guys are crazy as hell. They stole a llama, people. I spit at you, a llama. What do you even feed that thing? What tweaker owed you money and you went and confiscated his llama, a zoo animal? Poor Cleo. Cleo was returned to her rightful owner, so don't even worry about that. Apparently Cleo was well fed, probably grazed on the grass in the outback. I don't know much about Australia, but I'm gonna guess that they have some sort of plant to eat. It is a desert. Well, some of it. I don't know. I know I do have a lot of Australian viewers that come in and comment, and they tell me about all the craziness down there. So any of you want to throw your boy a bone over here, is the whole continent deserted? Desert light? Arid? Nailed that. What's wrong with you, Rick? That's why we don't smoke weed. Desert light? Dessert light? We're gonna cut that right on out of here. Moving on. So yeah, they stole an alpaca. Little side story for you. Me and my best friend A-Train, we've stolen an animal once. It was our friend's dog. It's a French bulldog named Toad. And our friend Doc, we'd been texting for like a week and we were getting blanked. I mean, we all grew up together. What do you mean you're not gonna at least tell me to go F myself, bro? Like, you kidding me? So me and A-Train take a trip over to his house. Jump in the backyard. Toad, you're coming with us. We proceed to take pictures all day long of us and Toad having a great time. You wouldn't believe how many times Doc tried to call us that day. Son of a bitch. Had to steal his dog. Had to literally steal that man's dog for him to call his friends back. Moving on. July 1st, 2015. An empty field in Ridgefield, Washington. Detectives come across a pretty grisly scene. They find a guy. He's been sent to the upper room in this field. Now, after checking around, they find out that this gentleman is Bagger Bob. Bagger Bob used to be the treasurer for the Gypsy Jokers Portland. That is up until September of 2014 when he got kicked out of the club. Now, the reason he was kicked out of the club is because he developed himself a little taste for the dragon. How much of a taste? $18,000 worth. That's what he had stolen from the club. Now, eventually when the men found out, they took him downstairs. You know, that area where there's no phones allowed. They tuned him up really nice from what I'm hearing. And afterwards, had him sign over his truck, his motorcycle, and a trailer to pay the club back for that 18 G's that he had chased. Back it up 1 month. June 2015, in Oregon. The president of the Gypsy Joker Portland chapter, his name is Mark. Now, Mark has an on-again, off-again relationship with this girl. She's for the streets, really. He lets her stay for a couple of days. She comes, she robs him, she leaves, goes and sells all of his stuff. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Now, I don't know if she was involved or if she was not. I'm not going to say that she was. Something happened while Mark was away. The FedEx guy comes to the house, sees her zip-tied to a chair, but he doesn't call the police. He calls Mark. Mark does some digging, and the girl gives it up that Bagger Bob is the one who tied her up. Now, was it planned between the two of them? Who knows? Any way it goes, Bagger Bob thought the best thing that he could do after being kicked out of the club is to rob cash, a TV, valuables, and some bangers from the president of the club you were just kicked out of. Now, you could do that to just a regular dude, and he's going to be thinking about sending you to the upper room. Now you're doing it to Diamond Patch members own house. You know better than this. This is not going to turn out well for you. Naturally, Mark decides, I'm going to put the word out on Bob. I'm going to need to see him about this. He tells everybody, all the support clubs, all of his club brothers, anybody who will listen, if you see Bagger Bob, you let me know. Mid-June 2015, some random house in southeast Portland, Oregon. 4 men run in there armed, start whipping everybody, tie him up, we're looking for Bagger Bob. Now Bagger Bob didn't happen to be at that house at that time, but the TV that was stolen from Mark's house was in this house. So they were hot on his heels. He just wasn't there at that time. June 18th, 2015, Portland, Oregon. One of the support clubs for the Gypsy Joker is the Road Brothers. One of the members of the Road Brothers, they call him Projects. He just got out of jail. Now Projects, he's approached by the vice president of the Portland chapter, Earl. Earl tells Projects, hey, Bagger just robbed Mark. We're going to need to find him. Obviously, trying to do good, be a good support club brother, he says, I'll put the word out with my guys. It doesn't take very long. Within 10 days, Projects had tracked down Bagger Bob. He gets a hold of Earl. Earl gets a hold of Mark. Bing, bang, boom. 4 dudes show up at the house that Bagger's at. Now Bagger, he's sitting outside in his car. You see a Suburban pull up. Couple of guys jump out. Put a hood over his head. We're going for a ride, Bagger Bob. We got stuff to talk about, buddy. The next day, Bagger Bob, well, he's found laying in a field, gone to the upper room. Whoever had done whatever they had done to him, they put in real time and effort on what they did. We have a nail through the foot. He's got no nips. They took his nips. Took his nips. I like that move. Not going to say I've seen it before once, but I have. I definitely, with a pair of nail clippers. Never mind. Don't do stuff like that. That's wild stuff. I do not condone behavior like that. Now, almost 3 years later, June 2018, Portland, Oregon, a grand jury convenes and a U.S. attorney, he brings down an indictment on 3 people that they believe were involved in sending Bagger Bob to the upper room. Testifying in that grand jury, well, it was Mark's girl. So obviously 57-year-old Portland chapter president Mark, he's arrested. So is Projects, who's had a Gypsy Joker patch on his back for the last year and a half. Coincidence? And they take down Vice President Earl. Now they charge all 3 of these men with murder in aid of racketeering, kidnapping in aid of racketeering resulting in death, kidnapping resulting in death, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping resulting in death. Now here's the thing. There's 2 kidnappings for 1 man. That just never made any sense to me. I mean, I get it. It's a double down, right? The jury can say, oh, they're guilty of the RICO side of it or just the plain side of it. But it's got to be one or the other. If these men are convicted on this, how are all 3 of them going to be charged and convicted on 2 counts of kidnapping for 1 person? Am I making sense here? The justice system's a weird thing. November 29th, 2018, Oregon. Somebody's been talking. A superseding indictment comes down, and there are more men added to the indictment. Now, some of them were charged with just the newly added charge of conspiracy to commit racketeering. Some of them were charged with all 4 of the other charges and conspiracy to commit racketeering. Now, all 4 of those together, 5 now, that's going to get you a life sentence. Now, the men to join Mark, Earl, and Projects in this new superseding indictment, well, the first one is the national president of the Gypsy Jokers, The Wiz. Now, I've heard stories about The Wiz, and this dude, he's about that business. I've heard somebody showed up late, maybe had a little dental work done by The Wiz, allegedly, fixed them right on up. Don't be late. Took their patch, kicked them out of the club for it. This dude does not reward tardiness. Also indicted was Chad. Now Chad, from what I'm hearing, is a national sergeant at arms at the time. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I'm sure it'll get cleaned up in the comments. I don't want to say that as fact, but I do know Chad was definitely indicted in this. Then you have a sergeant at arms, Stryker. Stryker's also from Portland. And Joseph Folkerts, a former road brother turned Gypsy Joker, then immediately kicked out of the club and beat up. So let's start out with that man, 62-year-old Joseph Folkerts. Now the cops, they found him driving down the street.
Video sent to Fox 12 shows the moments ATF agents swarmed a pickup truck on SR 503 in Battleground yesterday just before noon and arrested Joseph Folkerts.
They do their whole move on him, pull him in. Now Joseph didn't waste any time at all. He went ahead and he pled guilty, obviously in return for testimony. He pled out to one sole count of conspiracy to racketeering. Now the cops admitted that Folkerts, he had nothing to do with actually going and snatching up Bagger Bob. In fact, Folkerts was actually miles and miles away looking for Bagger Bob in a different area. Then he got the phone call. He came up. What was happening was happening. From what I hear, maybe he held somebody down or held Bagger down and let them get their work in on Bagger. For that, he ended up in this indictment. He was also kicked out of the club. Now, Folkerts is also the one who drove to dump Bagger off. Now, if you ask Folkerts' attorney, he says that he was forced into the club. That after this happened, they forced him to wear that patch. Come on, guy. As hard as it is to get into one of these clubs, you expect us to believe that you were forced into it. You didn't want to take no parts in it. No, I'd seen too much. I don't want to be involved. Then what were you doing there in the beginning? You were there because that's what you wanted to be. Now, you don't have to lie and have your attorney put all this flair. Just admit it, bro. You've already pled out. Now, obviously, it wasn't until he was beaten out of the club and kicked out of the club that all of a sudden his story came out that he didn't want nothing to do with any of this and he never wanted to be a Gypsy Joker anyway. They forced him to do it. Now, looking at that as a move for a club to pull, I'm just saying, you're kind of setting yourself up for this dude to snitch on you at the same time. If you kick him out after he witnessed something like that, what do you expect is going to happen when they come knocking at the door? I don't know. I read that somewhere. Maybe a Confucius book. I don't know. Man who kicked other man out of club who witnessed murder gets snitched on. Something. I lose the wording, you know. Now, obviously, like I said, 3 men were charged in the beginning and then a whole bunch of people afterwards. That means somebody was talking. That somebody? Young Projects. Now, Projects, who had become a full patch member of the Gypsy Joker after this happened, also was the man who delivered the 2 fatal blows to Bagger Bob. So in return for taking down the president of a chapter, the government is willing to give a good deal to the guy who actually landed the fatal blows. Everybody needs to think about that when you want, if you're in a club and you want to wear that president flash, that's what comes with it. They'll let a killer go to get you. And that's what they did. That's exactly what they did here. He pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to racketeering and got just under 12 years for it. Now, it can't be lost on us that had he just kept his mouth shut to begin with, he'd have been alright. And the reason I say that is, I have the interrogation of both Earl and Mark, and neither one of them gave any information up. So if the 3 of them had stood tall against a crackhead woman that was testifying against them and a known thief, they probably would have stood a pretty good chance. But because 1 out of the 3 decided that he wanted to tell on everybody, he not only got himself 12 years, but everybody else facing life sentences. Now, Stryker, the sergeant at arms, he was the next one to roll. He decided everybody else is rolling, so am I. I'm going to go ahead and try and get this 135-month sentence. I'm just going to tell on everybody in the court, open court. I'm going to point at them and say, yeah, Your Honor, that's that man right there. Your own brothers. Then there's Vice President Earl. He's the one who held his mud the best in the interrogations. Here's a little clip of Earl doing his thing.
I've been doing investigations on your club for a number of years.
Like I said, I still don't know why I'm here.
I want to talk to you about a guy named, he goes by Bagger Bob.
Yeah.
Okay? The reason I want to talk to you is obviously, as we all know, he died a while back. Okay? So we've been investigating that. We've talked to a lot of people. I know when the incident went down. I know that you left your house. I know you came back to your house. I know that you picked up Mark. I know you drove to Holiday. I know you dropped Mark back off. I know you drove north. We've talked to people. I'm not going to lie to you. People have given you up. So, he gets kicked out. And then we fast forward to a period several months, or about a month prior to his death, where he decides to do something to someone in the club, from what I understand, or someone in their family. What do you know about that?
Very little. I mean, you guys know more than I know.
Well, I don't know about that.
I think I'm a private lawyer, man. You have to invoke that right at this point, I think.
Okay. Perfect.
Now, after watching that interrogation, you would have thought Earl is going to take this to the box. He lawyered up right away. He did the right thing. Say it ain't so, Earl. Earl was able to secure himself, on one charge, a 10-year deal. Earl should be out in the next couple of years. In return, he testified against the national president and the chapter president. So let's talk about the three men that did stand tall and take this to trial. First, obviously, let's talk about the Wiz, the national P for the Gypsy Jokers. Now, he was charged with one sole count of conspiracy to commit racketeering, which all alone would have gotten him probably a 20-year sentence. What they're saying is, Project said that he talked to the national P of the Gypsy Jokers after all of this happened, and that Wiz told him, just stand tall. If the cops come, you guys will be okay. Don't roll over, hold strong. Obviously, young Projects did not hear anything the Wiz said, and now the Wiz, he's fighting for the next 20 years of his life. He stood tall, he fought this, and he actually was acquitted of that charge. He was allowed to walk away a free man on this case. Kudos to him. He just got all the street cred in the world. Then there is Chapter President Mark. Chapter President Mark, he took it to the box, but he blew trial. They found that man guilty of all 5 charges. Murder in aid of racketeering, kidnapping in aid of racketeering resulting in death, kidnapping resulting in death, 2 kidnappings for the same guy, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. For this, the judge obviously gave Mark a life sentence. The only person in Mark's chapter that stood strong next to him is Chad. Now, Chad wasn't there when they snatched Bagger Bob up. Chad wasn't involved in the actual beating of Bagger Bob, and Chad was not involved in sending Bagger Bob to the upper room. You have to think that he sat and he said, hey man, look, I gotta fight this in court. I wasn't even there. None of it mattered. They found that man guilty of the 4 charges, but not the conspiracy. So the only thing that you could possibly say he was actually involved in and guilty of is the conspiracy. Did he talk about it with club members? But the jury got it backwards. They got him for the murder, the kidnapping, the conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and they acquitted him of the conspiracy to racketeering. Now, none of that made a difference in the end, because Chad got the same sentence as Mark. He got life. The man was not even involved in the actions of the club, and he got a life sentence. The system's broken. Now, after sentencing, of course, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon had all the inciting words and this, the fire words that they always put out there in phrases. His name, Scott Asfuck. Asfog? Alright, Scott Asfuck. He said things like, to increase their power and prominence in the club, and organized violent crime will not be tolerated in Oregon, and all of those key words. Patting himself on the back because he got everybody in the club to snitch. Had nothing to do with him. The feds rolled these dudes though. They really did. I listened to some of the interrogation of Mark, and that fed, Mark did well. He did really well in his interrogation. He shut him down so much and got a lot of information out of that fed without answering very much at all. And he would tell him straight out, I'm not going to answer that. And there's a couple of times where I thought, oh, the fed's going to get him here. And he didn't. It was crazy. It was insane. So I'm actually going to take that. I'm going to do a reaction to it and put it up on the members page. I don't know if I can put it in public because I don't want to get a copyright strike for using that footage. But if I put it on the members page, there's no strikes. There's none of that. I'm just allowed to not monetize it, leave it over there. Obviously, I show a lot of different stuff over there. That's the place to go check that out. So in the end, Mark went down because his crackhead girlfriend and his druggy ex-motorcycle club brother probably got together and said, hey, he's out of town. All you got to do, throw some zip ties on me, put me on the chair. FedEx guy will catch me, and take everything. Or the other way around, she had no idea about it. She's a complete victim. And Bagger Bob and two of his friends are the biggest dope fiend scumbags there ever was. Either way it goes, Mark is literally sitting there because his ex-brother robbed his house. All because he got robbed. And you can't put up with something like that. If you're in a street, if you're the president of a 1% club, you can't have people robbing your house. What the problem is don't bring in the support club guys. You guys probably would have walked out of the police station that day if Young Projects wasn't there to go ahead and sink that ship. Now, on another level, they made this a RICO case. This wasn't a business call. This was a personal beef between Mark and Bagger Bob. It's not like Mark did this to increase any power, influence, any of that. The last thing he wanted was for people to know about it. He did this because he had to prove a point to the people that did know about it. That you can't just come and violate my home while I'm not here. And because of that, the government, they used RICO and they sunk him for life. Zero DNA evidence or any of that links Mark to this. Only the testimony of co-conspirators. And we need to stop allowing that. You cannot be a co-conspirator, take a deal, and testify against somebody. Because what's to stop a guy who won't talk to the cops being railroaded by a guy who has zero moral and will just roll? But he's the one who actually sent him to the upper room.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
Thank you for coming to Vegas Profile Stories. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.